Now, you can have state-of-the-art declared in the morning and it's outdated by lunchtime. I still strongly believe that if you can learn faster than your competition, you've got a strategic advantage. But the human approach of, okay, where can the business benefit and where will the people benefit in a non-threatening, non-adversarial way?
Hello and welcome back to Squaring the Circle. Today, we will be delving into a deep conversation about the impact of AI on the professional world. I'm Lily, here with my co-host Sasha, as well as our guest for today's episode, Mike McTaggart. Mike is a seasoned digital leader and innovator with over 20 years of experience in helping organizations leverage technology to achieve business growth, strategic differentiation, and agility. He is the president of Global Digital, a team of experienced technology executives who provide digital transformation, transformational leadership, and IT consulting services. Mike has a passion for technology and an engineering mind, as well as a track record of producing actionable, data-driven plans in the midst of all the noise. He has helped dozens of clients across various industries, from Fortune 500 companies to startups, to realize the potential of digital innovation, cloud and hybrid infrastructure, user experience, e-commerce, and IoT. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you.
Happy to be here. And as you were talking, I realized it's probably closer to 30 years now.
30 years.
Wow.
Has to be canceled.
That's
Happy
very
to be here.
impressive.
Thanks, Lily.
Yeah. All right. Well, Sasha, would you like to take it away?
Yes, thanks, and hello. Before we delve into the AI conversation, I also want to add that I know Mike for 30 years. Can you believe it? And he's a good personal friend of mine, as well as old and good partner for our company, Tizbi. We've been through many things together. And he's one of the people who I have ultimate respect as a technology leader. I also know him as a devoted Christian, and he's a father of beautiful triplets. He has 3 wonderful daughters. Yeah, with that, I think we should go, and I want to ask you the question.
Okay.
Mike, so as a leader of one of the most innovative companies in North Carolina, Global Digital, you are a practitioner. You're in the trenches of software development, AI. You have many customers. You also, your power is increased by wonderful team of
Yes.
wonderful, smart, amazing consultants. So you are the person I'm going to ask you this question. What is the state of the art of artificial intelligence in North Carolina?
Oh, state of the art or the state of AI.
State of the AI.
They're different. Yeah.
It's an art, but
There's so much happening, right? AI seems to change on an hourly basis. Decades ago, technology generations happened, in months or years, and that felt fast for a lot of us. Now, you can have state-of-the-art declared in the morning and it's outdated by lunchtime.
Isn't that true?
And so, the state-of-the-art, is almost impossible to pin down. Now, in North Carolina, I think the state of AI is a bit mixed. We have pockets of rapid development, innovation, people diving in with both feet, and we have pockets of real fear and trepidation, where we want to avoid some of the more hazardous ideas of rapid change. I don't think it's specific to AI in particular. I think it's really a fear of just the rapid notion of change. It can be disruptive.
Yeah. So, I've always been on the side of things that we are moving too slow. And that's why I have a black dress today. I want to represent the dark side of the story today.
Go fast and break things, right?
Yes. So it's like, for me today, the glass is going to be half empty. That's why I want to ask you this question. What is the biggest obstacle? What prevents the companies in North Carolina to grow faster? And let me, before you answer, I'm going to kind of ask you this, right? You hear, when you go to YouTube, to these wonderful speakers about AI, there are many of them. I don't want to even drop the name, but you kind of think they are all saying how great it is, how quickly it's developing. But yet, when you go to the client,
Mhm.
most often you see the problem of Excel files being too many, database which was produced 20 years ago being too slow,
Mhm.
or the rack space or some server security questions, infrastructure questions, but I not quite yet see them actively working on AI, but that's maybe my impression. Do you
So I,
have
I
that?
think we have a conflict of two different kinds of fear, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we like to hear people talking about FOMO, right?
Mhm.
FOMO, fear of missing out. And
Fear
so
of
there are a
missing
lot
out.
of people like you, like, hey, we've got to go fast. We're going to miss
Yes.
out if we don't embrace this new technology and get the value of it. And that's a legitimate fear, right? There are ways to leverage the current, I'll say, production ready or enterprise ready
Mhm.
tools and available libraries and models, et cetera, in a reliable way. They can be trusted to do certain tasks consistently and do them well, and thus you can get more efficiency, productivity, et cetera, out of certain parts of your workforce. So the fear of missing out is a legitimate fear, but there's also what some are calling FOMO, fear of messing up, right? Which is also a legitimate fear because those same models, while reliable 99% of the time for certain use cases, they're awful in other use cases. And so you have hallucinations, you have
Yeah.
data that maybe you're not totally sure if it's staying in the sandbox or if it's leaking out into the wild. Um, maybe you're not sure how to just put guidelines and governance in place. Um, or maybe you don't even want to admit that the data that makes AI or machine learning so powerful isn't accessible. And so for the last 10 years, 20 years, you've been accumulating as an organization spreadsheets and paper and emails and lots of great data, but it can't be easily turned over and used for AI. And so the fear of messing up is kind of an equally valid fear.
Do you think there's also a fear of the unknown when it comes to AI as well, and a lack of interest in implementing it into modern business out of fear of not knowing how to properly operate it?
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
because POW.
I don't know. We'll have to come up with an acronym later.
I mean, we just Lily just coined it, I think.
Yeah, write that down, right? We need to trademark it. um, yeah, no, I think you're right. You think about what the media at large has told us, especially through the lovely world of science fiction. The robots are out to take our jobs, right? They're going to replace us. It is the end of humanity. And there are plenty of vocal personalities in AI that are saying, "Hey, we need to pump the brakes. We need to slow things down. We're going to build these tools that will do fantastic things until it destroys us all." So, at both the macro level of kind of the concept of artificial intelligence, and then all the way down to the very personal level of, hey, if I let this tool into my day to day, and maybe it does make my job 50% more efficient, then what happens? Do I get cut to 50% hours? Does
Mhm.
my full time job with benefits turn into part time? Do I get replaced by a couple of people that can use the tools
Mhm.
instead of the team that I have today? There's some legitimate fear there as well. We like to think that just like other cases where we've seen technology enter the workforce and disrupt in the past, think of the prior industrial revolutions, they didn't so much reduce the number of jobs available. It changed the nature of those jobs, though.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the machines replaced the most dangerous aspects of the human jobs. And so automation and technology is not necessarily a bad thing, but if you're in those jobs and in those positions, it can be scary to have some unknown of what it's going to look like in the next 6 months.
Mhm.
Good question. Very true.
Indeed.
Thank you.
So let's go to the next question then.
Mm.
You handled the first two real well. Let's see if you can continue on this trend or keep
Okay.
this challenge.
Don't break my streak.
So, so if there is a technology leader
Mm-hmm.
who is listening to this podcast and he's probably thinking he's maybe has a FOMO, and FOU, and he's thinking, should he go for AI today? Should he wait a little longer? Maybe he already started and had a bad start or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. Maybe not. Maybe he's having a good start and he's still listening.
Mm-hmm.
So, or she. The question is, like, what advice would you have, or would you have any guidance for that
Mm.
leader
Oh,
on in AI area?
plenty. I mean, well, I mean, this is
Good. Oh my God.
this is
We
why
opened just a Pandora box.
guys get paid, right?
Okay.
This is what they hire me for. But there's a couple sort of key concepts that I think are important. Some have been around, since we really started talking about agile and DevOps. It's a world that
Mhm.
we've had plenty of conversations in, and you've heard me say before. There's four sort of key components for agile, right? There's you think big and act small, which certainly applies to AI as well. We can't go buy $50,000 worth a month of infrastructure costs
Mhm.
and then hope to build our own GPT and there are some ways to go big, but there are also plenty of ways to try things out and act small with a big vision. But then you try to fail cheap and learn fast. Right, and that last one is the ones that I tend to sort of linger on is how quickly can we learn, and whether it's agile or software development practices, just general product development, getting feedback from your customers, or AI. I still strongly believe that if you can learn faster than your competition, you've got a strategic advantage. And so learning fast is definitely a kind of a key sort of bit of advice that I would give. Are there opportunities to take something for a test drive, do a pilot within a small cohort in the company, and see how quickly you can learn?
Very good.
Now, the other sort of piece of advice that I would really consider, and this is somewhat related to some of the first parts of this conversation, is really around the idea of not forgetting the human element.
Mhm.
To move forward with an AI strategy or plan, or even just a project, without considering the impact on the people and the people's feelings about that, can set it up for failure right out of the gate. Into any time, and this is the lesson we've learned over and over again when we're making other changes in an enterprise, right? It could be deploying a new ERP. It could be changing the CRM. It could be launching a new product that we've built to our customers. Any big change tends to have an adoption curve.
And reverberation in your team, right? If
Right.
the team might not like it, or it will change their jobs. Somebody may be scared about losing the job in the future, but usually it's not the case. The way we usually one lost job generates two gain jobs, and people
Right.
can be just moved and elevated. The job
But it happens all the time. I mean, I was working in a project recently where a large enterprise was modernizing their CRM, and some of the top salespeople, the ones that really had nothing to worry about, were worried about their jobs because the new CRM meant there was going to be more visibility into their activities and into their relationships and more accountability. But these were the top performers.
Yeah.
I mean, they were knocking it out of the park from a results perspective, but they were afraid of the new tool. Um, and then that's happened over and over again. It's really no different with AI. If anything, those human factors might be even more important or more significant now because a CRM feels like something that I can put in a box, right? I know it does these things and it works this way. It affects these processes. AI is still this amorphous kind of nebulous thing.
People don't quite understand its role in the sales leadership process, in the building it up. That's wonderful. I don't even know you that question. Maybe taking it from the perspective of the technology leader, there are so many things to consider. It got to be scary. It has to be also rewarding, and there is this risk versus reward.
Right.
Do you want to kind of take? What's your take? Is it like a blue shirt or black shirt?
Well, I think if it's done right, it's absolutely a blue shirt. It's a good day. It's blue skies. Because there is so much potential. But I think the important factor, you identify. There's always going to be champions and detractors inside any big change, right? And there's ways to identify both sides pretty quickly. And usually we don't have to talk much about the detractors, right? It's often easy to people are quick to point out, okay, he doesn't want the change. He's scared of the change. This department or this team likes doing the work the way they do. It's usually harder, in my experience, to identify the ones that could be your real internal champions.
Yes.
But like an idea to help with that, if we're talking AI, especially if we're talking what most people mean right now is the generative AI kind of space. We won't get into the nuance of all that, although maybe we should.
Maybe we should, because generative AI is kind of, it's not all of it.
But if we talk about generative AI and what people, most people are buzzing about right now,
about that now.
You can do something like do a prompt writing competition. So you take a company with 1,000 employees.
Gamification.
Yeah, you gamify it.
Yeah.
But in doing that, you can identify very quickly, who are my top 100 evangelists or champions, because they're already using it.
Yeah.
So now we get them out of the shadows. And who are the ones that are seeing value? They've iterated those prompts and figured out which parts of their work streams can actually be automated. And so we're learning very fast because the team members are doing that work as part of the competition. What parts of the business can benefit the most from generative AI?
So what you just described to me seems like a cultural shift.
It is.
And I love this proverb that culture eats strategy for dinner.
Oh, right.
Right. So now what I heard from you, and correct me, but I think it's what you are saying, it's a little bit of cultural shift. Implementing AI in the company in the right way is a good cultural shift. And the way I understood your opinion on that is you have to be ready. You have to get your team ready. It's cultural. Get everybody on board. Get everybody behind the project. Explain the values. Explain the future benefits for the company, for each member, maybe specifically, right?
Absolutely. It's a big cultural shift. Yeah.
Very good.
Absolutely.
Okay. That said, let's go to the next one. Talent base. And
boy.
So I'm gonna kind of the short version of this question: what is your take on the talent base? Is there a shortage or not? Because it is perceptual, right? Like when you and I were working in this area, there was no AI, but there was software development. Then there was, we called it digital transformation, and we always were under the environment where there was a shortage. You couldn't find enough talent. You always had more opportunity than the talent. How it is? What's your take in AI?
Oh, this is a bit of a loaded question. So I personally believe that there is a talent shortage of what I would consider experienced and enterprise tier developers. When it comes to building these sorts of tools. So one of the great things, and a lot of people are talking about this, is the way these generative tools sort of lower the barrier to entry for software. You can use a generative AI tool to write code. And some have even talked about it being the end of SaaS, the end of software as a service. Why go out and buy the plugin for $100 a month if I can use this tool to write it myself in sort of a low, a prompt oriented way, or use a low code, no code tool to write this integration between two APIs for me. But, you and I have also been in scenarios, even recently, I can think of, where code was written without respect to the underlying data structure staying clean. It was a code first, a developer first approach rather than a data schema first approach.
Data centric versus user centric, right?
Right. And so, these generative tools can write code, they can write clean code, they can comment it, they can do a lot of things. But what I see happening is we've worked on projects where a code base was allowed to sort of organically grow over 4, 5, 6 years, right? It just keeps getting stuff and features bolted onto it and things. Yeah.
Because everything is a first priority. Business needs it now.
And so
we cannot stop and cannot go back and clean up the code. It's impossible.
Right, because it's in it's in use. The feature, the customers want this feature. We've got to deploy it. And so we just write more code and add it in. We add another table in a database.
What could possibly go wrong with it? That's normal.
So now we take a generative AI tool, like there's a lot of out there, and we can do that 5-year cycle in like 5 days.
Pretty much. From my experience, the AI today would not just write the whole code, but it will definitely accelerate the programmer.
Mm-hmm.
You can maybe do what was a week work in a day.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a programmer, you not just push the button and the code is written. That's not how it works today, considering hallucinations. But maybe it will work like that.
But it's going to be like any other
Mhm.
automation, right? It's an accelerant, but it can accelerate the bad and it can accelerate the good, right?
Perfect.
So a good or a good programmer can become great.
Great programmer. Mediocre programmer can become a good programmer. Pretty quickly, yeah.
But there's also going to be a rise of bad programmers that are now enabled, to crank out these products. I mean,
That's
like,
great title for the next episode.
Rise of bad programmers.
Let's put it down.
Well,
and
for
the Halloween, it's Halloween.
I can fall into the trap myself.
Mhm.
All right, it's easy for me, to sit down as a very busy and less technical person. I'm not a great coder. I learned this a long time ago. I'm really not a great programmer.
You're just modest.
No. My attention is too like short. Like I get frustrated in any scenario where like a rogue semicolon breaks everything. So I've never been a very good programmer. But I can grab a tool and whip up a web app. And install it on my phone.
There you go.
But that's not an app that I would want to take to market and sell to 100,000 subscribers, because it's not been through the rigor of a disciplined software development lifecycle. Some best practices get applied when they generate, when the generative AI creates the code, but it's not ready for prime time. So I think there is a shortage, but I think time will tell whether the increased production and efficiency of those good and great programmers becoming spectacular overcomes that.
Sounds good. So
You see.
All right. So, Mike, what steps would you say a business should take before it starts to implement AI into its organization? Is there a certain research that needs to be done? Is it different varying on business size? So if we're talking like a startup or a larger company, how should people approach integrating AI into their business?
So you may have picked up on this by now. I'm a big fan of a human-centric approach. So socializing the idea and then extracting from your own people the business use cases that have the most value. That's a great starting place. I've talked to many organizations, large and small, where the ultimate greatest sort of savor of time and productivity boost came from fairly mundane use cases that they didn't think of immediately. There were the unsexy tasks that just consume a lot of workers' day-to-day time. I mean, it could be as simple as just writing emails and such. There are some that really struggle in writing emails, communicating with customers or vendor partners or whatever, and that can be the sort of thing that AI can be a real superpower. In terms of automating some of those tasks or making it easier to arrive at the text that you want. But you have to get over some of that initial fear and trepidation, and make sure that people will adopt and use the tool. But the human approach of, okay, where can the business benefit and where will the people benefit in a non-threatening, non-adversarial way? Because you want them to adopt, regardless of what the business gains in the very beginning. A key sort of performance metric needs to be adoption. Do our intended users for this tool that we build fully adopt it? 80+% approach 100 if possible, right? So we really need widespread adoption. If you can do that on the first time out, then that will, make every subsequent effort much more frictionless.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that you have to do, and this needs to happen, in my opinion, in tandem, those very sexy and maybe higher ROI use cases usually require the incorporation of the business's own data. And that, I think, going back to the very start of our conversation, that's a pain point for a lot of companies. The data is simply not accessible. And so that effort that can be somewhat significant at times, to transform, clean up, make the data available to any tool, whether it's AI or just software analysis in a more traditional sense. Um, that needs to happen as early as possible, and get those efforts underway. Put the best practices in place, start tagging and segmenting your data, understand what you have and where it is, and then identify what's valuable to these tools and make it available.
Picking up on this subject,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the companies which kind of build their infrastructure based on the no-code cloud
Mm-hmm.
pieces. Say,
Mm-hmm.
for instance, you take the cloud-based CRM, cloud-based ERP, cloud-based
Mm-hmm.
ticket system, use something as a Zapier or some other tool to connect them all together. They don't even have their own database on site.
Mm-hmm.
And not my favorite type of infrastructure when I come to them. I just want to see how you feel about this company going AI. Now they don't have anything. They just got everything in the cloud. They build it cheap. They didn't need the programmers.
Well, so that there's risk involved in that, and hopefully they made the decision, at least when they selected those tools, that the cost, benefit analysis came out in their favor, right? And that's why
Yeah,
it was a thoughtful decision, hopefully, right?
hopefully.
But now they're in the situation where you're right, their data is spread out all over the place. They may have some automations in place to get work done. Um, I think there's two big hurdles that they face now. One is that idea of, all right, how do we get our data back under our roof,
Into usable way,
or
right?
into, or get our arms around it in a usable way? And that is impacted by the second factor, which is, are there contractual limitations around that data? I've seen cases where, um, the data is stored in the cloud by this product provider, but I can't just start querying it, 10,000 times per day without incurring some astronomical
Right.
cost or add-on, or I'm going to get throttled or limited in my access, or my login is going to get cut off. And so you have to be careful, even though their platform may handle it, you're kind of using it in a way they didn't intend.
Right.
And so, checking with those product providers and vendors to say, okay, what are the boundaries that I'm going to run into here? And then working intentionally, around that. Okay, I need, this is the data I need. I need to pull it down at this cadence or interval, and then now I'm going to run all of my, goodness on that. And
So
I know you're a fan of that.
I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that this company should go global
Mhm.
and ask them to come for the review, right? They seriously need somebody like one of your guys to come and do the full review of the system and put what they have and put what the direction they want to take together and see if you can lead them to the better solution,
Right.
or maybe the answer is not in the programming area, right? Maybe they want something they cannot afford or something else, right?
You never know. I mean, it could be, turn right back around and call you and say, okay, we've got to pull this data down and create a data warehouse here, and they need some help wrangling all of that. It's people smarter than me to actually do all of that work, which I hear you.
No, we are not qualified then. But some other company.
Yeah.
So but maybe let's, while on this subject,
Okay.
also I will ask you another half empty glass question. What are the things to avoid if you are a business owner who is planning the roadmap for AI for its organization? And you already touched on some of them. Maybe what other things to avoid?
Well, so licensing, that's a big gotcha right now. We've seen in the past where someone has gone out and tried to write some code, build a product, and their developers unknowingly grabbed some snippet of code that's not licensed for commercial use.
Yeah. How about open source?
Well, it depends on.
Is open source if the open source is in the infrastructure as a part?
I mean, I'm a big fan of open source.
Me too. Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily makes it prohibitive. It just requires what? Understanding the licensing.
Understanding the license, because there's only like 1,000 different flavors of open source, right?
Absolutely.
So, if you're going to, use an open source component, or, so now there's open source and licensable data sets. So if you want to train your model to do a specific task, and then you're going to turn that newly trained model and, an interface into a product, There's a lot of that going on, but is it, beyond the code that you used, is the data you used for training,
Are available to
is that license
licensable.
commercially, viable, or else, or are you going to have someone come up and say, hey, wait a second, you trained your model on my data, all of this revenue,
So, but it is not that scary, right? Understanding the license contract doesn't require the lawyer. You just read it,
You just read
copy
it.
paste to ChatGPT, ask her. No.
Yeah, please don't hallucinate. Yeah, I would not recommend trusting ChatGPT for legal advice.
All right.
But yeah, it's not a scary concept. It just has to be thought about in advance. Yeah, so that's a real big gotcha right now. What do you avoid? Avoid building your product on something that can't be sold.
Perfect.
All right, Mike, before we wrap things up, I would like to know, do you have any personal projects that you would like to promote at this time?
Oh, of course. So, first of all, if you're struggling with the strategy overall, when it comes to IT, AI, et cetera, we'd love to hear from you at Global Digital. I mean, we are, fractional technology leaders, so fractional CIOs, CTOs, CISOs, et cetera. And so we'd love to partner with you, augment and extend your team. That's a whole lot of what we do. Now, if you're struggling specifically with AI adoption and some of the cultural facets that we've talked about a little bit today, you should know that we've spun out a whole new company. It's really a sub team of our leaders that have experience guiding and coaching companies and leadership through these big disruptive changes with a very human centric perspective. And we're doing things like the prompt writing competitions, things like that, identifying our champions within the company and really accelerating adoption of AI. And so that's called Intelligence Catalyst. And so if you want that catalyst, identified inside your company and let us work with them to accelerate AI adoption, we'd love to hear from you at Intelligence Catalyst. Yeah.
So, and I can add that
Wonderful.
Global Digital had amazing list of satisfied clients and their big names. I highly recommend them.
We are very blessed. Yeah, we've got a great team.
Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mike, and Sasha, of course.
Thank you,
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Squaring the Circle. We will have future episodes featuring Mike coming soon.
Look forward to having you back.
Likewise. Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you all, and goodbye.